Hey, good evening, Crime Crunchies. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Courtney C. I am your host and a 27-year veteran of the media. Again, I appreciate you so much being here. Remember to subscribe, like, share, comment, backflip, put your foot up, whatever you need to do. I just really appreciate the support right now. I am a growing channel. So we are going to be starting off tonight talking about some things in the Nancy Guthrie case, okay? We've got actually some interesting kind of satellite stories going on in addition to, you know, the FBI still looking at the DNA. There's nothing new on that front that I've read, but we do have, I guess, maybe some rumor, some innuendo that's quite interesting. And I thought I would share it with some caveats tonight. So let me share my screen, get that going. Sharing the screen. So this morning, wow, very interesting. I saw this post come up in my email. I get emails from people.com, and I started doing some research, and Fox News had a good article. Headline: Sheriff's Office probing Nancy Guthrie vanishing faces intense backlash over social media post, tone deaf. The post about a different missing woman named Nancy drew accusations of being deliberate and evil. And I'm thinking, what in the heck are they talking about? But sure enough, the Pima County Sheriff Department had this post on X today. Nancy Radakovich, 82-year-old missing woman, vulnerable adult, and they follow it up with update: Nancy has been located, to which probably 10 million people went, oh my gosh, Nancy Guthrie has been found. And she hasn't. So let's take a look at some more of Sheriff Nano's fallout.
So the sheriff leading the Nancy Guthrie case is facing a massive recall effort as frustrated local demand answers.
I'm looking for people to help us out, get involved, go out and get signatures. Let's get the sheriff out of office and get someone in there that we can feel confident in.
Interesting.
So Arizona congressional candidate Daniel Gutierrez told Fox and Friends that he already has 500 votes.
Okay, they put a video on a story about the backlash on X. So, okay. Well, let's just go back to the article. The Pima County Sheriff's Department, which is already facing scrutiny for the way it has handled the high-profile missing persons case involving Nancy Guthrie, is facing furious online backlash after a post on X that some users have deemed insensitive. Update: Nancy has been located, said a post from 10:50 p.m. on Thursday night. The sheriff's office made the post in reference to a missing woman named Nancy Radakovich, an 82-year-old who the department had announced was missing 12 hours earlier. Nancy Guthrie, mother of Today host, went missing from her suburban Tucson home on February 1st. So here are some responses on the post. Okay, now you're all just being a-holes on purpose. One X user responded, thank God she was found, but come on, can you be any more tone deaf? Here's another one. What a miserable, tone deaf, out of touch police department. WTF is wrong with you people? And the post is still up with no edits. Morons. Another post. Are you kidding? So unprofessional, you couldn't list the last name, said a third. And I am surprised because I figured they would have taken this post down. But let me go to their main page. Yeah, 20 hours later, it still says Nancy has been located. And, you know, when you look at this from afar, it does kind of look like Nancy. It does. You can see how it kind of looks like Nancy, but it's not. And so when they said Nancy has been located, they haven't edited this. And there are 214 comments, which actually, I'm surprised there's not more. But this is the wrong Nancy. Thank goodness Nancy Radakovich has been found. That's a good thing. But it is tone deaf, completely tone deaf. And I still can't believe that as of right now, they have not updated this. I cannot believe it. So there's that. We also had a moment today where, and I don't know, I guess people are analyzing everything that she does now, which, I mean, I guess I get, because, you know, there's a rumor that I'm going to cover tonight with the strict caveat that I don't know if it's true. But why Savannah Guthrie left mid-interview on Today's Show. Now people are watching what Savannah's doing, but I'm now curious myself. And I haven't read this article yet. So we're going to find out together why Savannah left mid-segment. So viewer of the Today Show were left puzzled after Savannah Guthrie appeared to step away in the middle of a live interview on Wednesday. The unexpected moment quickly gained traction online, with clips circulating and sparking concern. As speculation grew, many tried to connect the incident to her mother, Nancy Guthrie's ongoing case. However, a source has since weighed in, suggesting there may be a far less dramatic explanation behind the brief absence. And then here's somebody saying something weird happened. Let's watch this. I haven't seen it.
Okay, so right here, I've got Miss Anne Hathaway right here, Mother Mary herself. She has got a sneak peek at her new movie, and we have talked a little bit about Devil Wears Prada 2, just a teeny tiny little bit. Okay, it's the year of Anne Hathaway, but first, this is today on NBC.
So she teased the segment, and then I guess when they come back, let's see if this is still going. Maybe when they come back, Hoda's doing the interview.
Enchanted.
Which, I mean, is that really a big deal? I'm not sure that it's.
We're back. Anne Hathaway singing.
Okay, and that's it for that. All right, let me just turn the volume off. All right, so let's see why Savannah stepped away. Everybody's wondering now. According to the Daily Mail's report, the situation may not have been as unusual as it seemed to viewers at home. A source who spoke with the outlet claimed that such transitions can be part of normal broadcast flow. They explained that it's not unusual for a host to tease an upcoming segment before another presenter takes over the interview. The moment in question came during an interview with Anne Hathaway. Guthrie introduced the segment before the show cut to a commercial break. When the broadcast resumed, co-host Hoda Kotb had stepped in to continue the conversation with no immediate on-air explanation for the switch. The abrupt transition led to a wave of online reactions. Some viewers described the moment as strange, while others speculated about possible reasons for Guthrie's absence. A widely shared post by @CrimeWivesClub on X amplified the discussion, gaining significant traction within hours. As of now, there's been no formal explanation from NBC regarding the change in the segment. Yeah, I mean, I could see why people were concerned if she stepped away unexpectedly. You know, did she get news of something? And I know that everybody is so heavily invested. So let's continue on with some of the rumors. And that is that supposedly there's a big update that somebody has paid BitCoin. Let's watch. This is Zach Peter.
missing, and I guess here was the big update that was supposed to come last night. It came from this account called the Midwest Pundit. Originally, we thought that there may be some legitimacy to this because Savannah abruptly left the Today Show. She was interviewing Anne Hathaway and then suddenly cuts to a commercial break. And then all of a sudden, when they come back from commercial, Hoda Kotb is then interviewing Anne Hathaway. Just very strange. And Savannah, to my understanding, did not come back for the remainder of the show. And then I believe she's back as of today, Thursday. But yesterday, this account on Facebook, the Midwest Pundit, posted that there was this big announcement or that there was a big break in the investigation that was going to be coming out. And everybody was on the edge of their seats, myself included, expecting there to be some sort of big announcement. This was, I guess, the groundbreaking announcement that he put out. This is from the Midwest Pundit. It says, "Good evening, breaking down these updates in bullet points for ease. One, the ransom to BitCoin guy was paid." I'm assuming that's the pen pal that's been writing to Sheriff Harvey on TMZ every day. So I guess they paid his, what was it? He was asking for half a Bitcoin is what he lowered the price to. I guess that was suddenly, affordable for the family. It says, two, he admitted in emails that Nancy never made it to Mexico, but was alive for 1 to 2 days. Okay, I think we all assumed she wasn't alive for any more than 2 days. She's 84 years old and she was sickly. Three, Bitcoin guy was an eavesdropper. So he wasn't, I guess, part of the actual alleged old lady snatching. He just was eavesdropping. Was he in his car eavesdropping the entire time? Four, the main suspected kidnappers' initials are JHRG. Throwing this in for the I told you so moment. JHRG. What is JHRG? That doesn't spell Annie or Tommaso. He said the new details are ransom was paid, information points away from Mexico, unlikely that this Jew is connected to the kidnapping, and the FBI apparently has a person of interest. He continued by saying big night. I don't know, big night as in you gave us a heart attack over nothing. He says the feds, but not Pima County, the feds have an idea. Finding the sole survivor is the journey to justice. The soul survivor. What in the Akon song, Soul Survivor? What? This update, I feel conned. I feel duped. I'm sorry that I conned and duped you. From now on, we only trust Father Brian Enton.
That's true.
Even if they did pay the Bitcoin guy and this is the information he gave him, I want my Bitcoin back. It wasn't even my Bitcoin, but I want a refund. This is some BS. Where's Nancy? Where's the lady? How have we still not found the damn lady? Sorry, not the damn lady. To Nancy up in heaven, I apologize. But where's the lady?
And thank you.
Okay, it's Jason.
Okay, and yes, apparently someone commented here, if Enton says it happened, otherwise nothing. And again, this is a huge caveat. We're going to go over to the Midwest Pundit. I've never heard of this person before, but he is claiming, quick update, I'll continue to share the little information I received despite the haters. And I don't know how that's why this has to be made up. But the thing is nobody's talking. And, I'm grabbing onto anything at this point. But yes, he did post yesterday at 4:02 p.m. Quick post. I've been advised the DNA testing being done is actually an IgG, which is genealogy test on a suspected relative of JHRG who voluntarily donated a genetic sample. JHRG has not been located, but this test could either exclude him or be a step forward to identify confirmation. I'll update as soon as I know more. And that is in response to, I don't know. Apparently, he's got information that in this post, good evening, breaking down these updates and bullet points for ease. The ransom to Bitcoin guy was paid. He admitted in emails that she never made it to Mexico, but was alive for 1 to 2 days. Bitcoin guy was an eavesdropper per Bitcoin guy, meaning maybe he's saying that he heard somebody talking about it. The main suspected kidnappers' initials are JHRG. I don't know. Again, this is with a huge grain of salt, but I'm sharing it because I don't know. I would love to think that they have paid. I want them to pay the half Bitcoin. I've been saying that Harvey Levin needs to pay the half Bitcoin, even if the family doesn't. And so with this rumor coming out, and then Savannah stepping out of the segment yesterday, it's just kind of like, okay, did something happen? Is she getting information? I don't know. All right, so that's it. That's all I have on Miss Nancy. We're going to switch over to Brian Hooker now. And we're going to dive into some analysis by one of my favorites on YouTube, Samantha Benigno. And Benigno, I'm not even going to say it right, but she's amazeballs. So let's watch this little reel here about Lynette Hooker's daughter. Let me get the volume.
The search for her in the Bahamas. And a missing American woman's family is joining the search for her in the Bahamas. Lynette Hooker's husband, Brian, says she fell off their boat nearly 2 weeks ago. He was taken into police custody, but then released without charges. Now her family's asking why he's back in the U.S. after vowing to stay and search for Lynette. ABC's Victor Kendo has the latest.
Carly Aylesworth, the stepdaughter of Brian Hooker, arriving in the Bahamas alongside her boyfriend Steve to help with the search for her missing mother, Lynette.
We were also wondering and asking why Brian left after he said, hey, I'm going to stay here until I find my wife.
The couple admitting they were surprised to learn Brian left the Bahamas less than 48 hours after being released from custody. But according to his attorney and family, Hooker left the Bahamas to care for his mother in Sacramento.
We're not going to say that he doesn't deserve to see his mother before she dies, but we're just saying Carly didn't get that option. Carly didn't get the option to see her mother before she died.
I spoke with Brian the morning after his release. He told me he wouldn't leave the country until Lynette was found.
So you plan on staying in the Bahamas?
Yes, this is where my wife is.
The Royal Bahamas Defense Force announcing that the search for 55-year-old Lynette Hooker remains active and has not been suspended, despite the fact that Brian reported her falling overboard nearly 2 weeks ago. Carly and Steve telling us they gave a statement to Bahamian police and remain cautiously optimistic.
They're just not releasing information because it's an ongoing investigation, which we understand. We're just a little, we seem frustrated because of the fact that we haven't found her yet, and we would hope by now we would have.
Steve and Carly say they plan on retracing Lynette's last steps. Brian Hooker is now in California. His attorney tells us he returned to the United States to be with his ailing mother. Diane?
And a missing American woman's family is joining the search for her in the Bahamas.
There's that, but we also have the daughter has spoken out, and I believe her first interview revisits a boat where mom and stepfather lived. And this is a new interview, so it's really quick. It's about a minute, so I'm gonna hit play on this.
Turn now to the case of Lynette Hooker, the American woman missing in the Bahamas for nearly 2 weeks now. This morning, her daughter, Carly Aylesworth, is there helping to help search for her mom, who allegedly fell out of a boat. Now, according to police, Hooker's husband, Brian, remains a suspect in her disappearance, but he has not been charged with a crime and denies having anything to do with it. In a Dateline exclusive, Carly visited the boat where Lynette and Brian lived for the first time since her mom went missing. The 28-year-old emotional as she imagined her mother still there.
How does it feel to be here, to be back here with everything that's happened?
It's making it a little bit more real. A lot of sadness. Like when I first got here, I sat up on there and looked at the boat and started talking to her like she was here.
What did you say to her?
I was like, hey, Mom, I'm here wherever you are. Like, I just want to talk to you and see you again.
Carly says she spent 3 hours talking with police in hopes to continue bringing attention to this case. Brian Hooker, meanwhile, has now left the Bahamas after being released from custody. His lawyer tells NBC News he left because his mother is ill but plans to return.
Sure. Well, I don't know. I doubt that, though. I sincerely doubt that. There's no way, and we can't really be surprised that he left. I mean, I guess who wouldn't leave? Because I guess in the Bahamas, it's not unusual if they have like 48 hours that they can hold somebody, and they either have to bring charges or release them. But what's typical in the Bahamas is they'll release them and then they'll drum up some other reason to detain them again, which detaining means basically arrest and put them in jail for another 48 hours. And so they probably were going to continue messing with him, but it just looks really bad. And I want to add that we only know what he has told people. This is definitely, there's no other information, no other source other than what Brian has told people. And I believe that if he is behind this, that he has definitely, shared information that is pushing people in the opposite direction. I don't think he wants Lynette's body found at all if there is any wrongdoing on his part. I can't imagine he wants her found at all. And I believe that the Bahamian officials are not believing everything he says, because they're definitely searching on land with cadaver dogs. So let's watch this video as well and see what is happening.
Now to continuing coverage of the missing Michigan woman in the Bahamas. It's been more than a week since Lynette Hooker disappeared at sea.
Today we're hearing a recorded conversation between Brian Hooker and a family friend about the search for Lynette. 13 News 9's Michael Martin has our story.
Might be old.
This phone call lasts nearly 45 minutes, taking place just days after Brian says Lynette fell overboard. And despite the chaos of the moment, the active search and corresponding criminal investigation, Brian lays out an extremely detailed account, what he describes as the cascade of failures that led to her disappearance.
This is not really a thing. I mean, she has to come back. Otherwise,
It was Saturday, April 4th, when Brian Hooker tells police his wife, 55-year-old Lynette Hooker, fell overboard from their 8-foot dinghy while en route back to their boat, the Soulmate.
I'm just here until I get her. That's basically the deal. I can't tell you I don't have to tell you what it's like to want to give up and not, but that was the craziest night drifting out in the Abaco Sea.
This phone call you're listening to happened just a few days later on Tuesday, April 7th.
We did so many things wrong. Even I think my anchor dragged after I set it out.
Blaine and Marnie of the Sailing Cameo YouTube channel originally recorded Brian's account to help facilitate search and rescue efforts.
When these guys, or if these guys give up after Wednesday, I'm going back out. I'm going to drop the hook and I'm going to go in super close in my stupid dinghy until I find her.
Initially, they tried to get the recording to local authorities.
All you got, and it's floaty. All you got to do is stay afloat. That's all I want for her, is to have stayed afloat and got somewhere.
But say after several days, they had no luck.
Motivated, but not like I am, and I'm never leaving until I get that woman, and that's all there is to it. So
they posted it online in an effort to get his firsthand account in front of investigators.
We were sitting on Brian's actual words of what happened. And that's crucial in this time frame of finding our friend Lynette alive. We still believe we can.
When Brian was taken into police custody last week.
It's stupid. Stupid mistakes all built into, frankly, a devastating loss to everyone she touched.
They felt it was more important than ever to share his perspective.
And I wax pontifical about having an authentic life, and it's authentic because there's risk. And then I lost my wife that same night, and I feel like the gods were listening in.
Brian Hooker's attorney has.
All right, I'm going to stop it there. I don't know. I just he and we're going to listen. We're going to go into Samantha, and I never say it right. Benigno, and she is absolutely brilliant. If you have not tuned into her show, I definitely recommend you do. It's the I Don't Belong Here with Samantha Benigno. She says it better than I do. It's Italian. And she is a psychology student, and she's actually working on her PhD, and her thesis is on like language analysis and, just decoding what people say and what they mean and the truthfulness of their words. And she spent a lot of time actually analyzing the Karen Reed case and the House defendants and whatnot. But she's doing a really good job on Brian Hooker. And I've listened to her enough now that I have kind of picked up on some of the things that she listens for. And this guy is definitely all over the place. I mentioned last night that one of the things that Samantha looks for is the way our memories are in our brain. It's like a computer, but our memories go in order of the things that we do. It goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way over. And it's only in that order. And our minds do not do a good job of mixing up the order in which things happen. And that's why if you're interviewed by the police, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll ask you questions and then they'll cut forward and they'll ask you to go backwards and answer questions of events that happen forwards and backwards, because that's how they catch people being deceitful. Is if you can't keep the same story forwards and backwards, it's usually because it actually is made up. Okay. And unfortunately, Samantha seems to think that Brian is doing that. So she's got 3 segments on this. I'm probably not going to play everything because I just don't see the reason doing that, but it is very interesting. And she definitely catches him in a little fib about his cell phone. So let's just take a look at part 1 and then we'll just go from there.
Well, we started out, I drove my niece. We met off the highway. My sister was there. We went into McDonald's to greet her. My daughter used the restroom. We had a whole conversation about something that she's, working on. Then my daughter and I got gas. So I could go through a play-by-play of everything we did pretty quickly, as you just saw, and it would be in order, right? You're not going to hear me jumping all over the place. Number one, because that bucks the law of efficiency. Now, I'm not sure that that's going to come up a lot in this conversation, but one thing you will hear me talk about is this law of efficiency. That's my language. So that's me kind of putting my spin on some terminology that might be common for those that do statement analysis. But what it means is we humans, we are naturally drawn to basically doing anything that we can to limit the amount of energy expenditure that we have to use every day. And one of the ways that we limit that expenditure is through our language. So we are going to find the simplest way to communicate whatever it is that we need or want to communicate. And if there's somebody doing something other than that, if we see a lot of excessive extra words, extra language, things that just don't feel necessary in the context, or if things are majorly out of sequence, out of order in the way we would expect a story to unfold time-wise, then that's problematic because that's really difficult to do. If I try to sit here and recall last night's events, even though it was last night, if you ask me to do it out of order, that's going to require a lot more energy for me. I'm going to have to really think harder about, well, what time were we here and when were we there, and go all over the place. That's harder. That's part of why that's not how we recall information, right? We do it in order because it's easy. It flows that way. It goes in sequence. That's how it happened, right? We recall it how it happened. Again, if you were asking me to recall it out of sequence, it would be much more difficult. So what does that mean? That means if we see somebody bucking the law of efficiency, if we see somebody telling us a story that's wildly out of sequence, that's a problem. Okay, because that's not how humans recall information. Another example of that we saw with the Garrett Koenig case, which was somebody speaking in the present tense. When we recall the past, we know it was in the past, so we use past tense, right? If somebody bucks that current and starts saying something as though it's happening now, that could be a sign of a lot of things like fabrication, because it's not coming from memory. That's what it means. It means that somebody's making the story up as they're going along, but it's not what they see from memory, right? All right.
She's so
Let's get started. I will shut up now.
She basically just bounced off the dinghy in the middle of a little blow, like
Okay. So
Right
to
off the bat.
start, we have she. So that's a repeating pronoun. Whenever we have a repeating pronoun, at a minimum, we know that it's sensitive, but we're going to send up a flag. Okay. So we're going to send up a flag. She. That's how we start this. So then he says, she, basically. Now, basically, I would assume is an obvious red flag to most of us because it clearly implies, well, in a roundabout way, right? Like, well, the essence of what happened is.
And I have to say, going back to like the Karen Reed trial, because Samantha will do analysis and go back and watch different people's testimony, and she'll play a witness who's not one of the House defendants, and how somebody who is telling the truth, when they answer the question, it's very quick. They don't use many words. They don't overshare. They don't overtalk. They don't say things like she basically, well, it's very straightforward. It's she fell out of the boat instead of, well, she basically just kind of bounced out of the boat. It would be somebody coming out and saying, no, she literally fell out of the boat.
Or, well, I'm generalizing, but something along those lines. And either way, it's leaving something out. So he's not telling us what happened. By his own admission, she basically means I'm not telling you what happened. First thing right out of the gate, when describing what has happened to Lynette, we know already 3 words in, we are not getting the whole story.
Or the real story.
So the question is, are we getting any of the story? Is this even close to what happened, right?
She basically just bounced.
Okay. She basically just. Okay. Now, just can be a couple of fold. It's problematic for a number of reasons. First, it's minimizing. So, well, it was just, but we see it all the time with people who are giving us their alibi. For example, someone is calling 911 and they say, I just stumbled upon my wife, because I wasn't here before, but now I'm here. In other words, I just got here. So before they've told you anything about the state of the person in need, they're telling you about their whereabouts. I just arrived. I don't know anything about what's going on. So here we have minimizing as well as what we would expect if somebody's holding in their mind what actually happened. So he has an image of what actually happened, and he's saying to us, look at this thing I'm telling you. So she basically just bounced off the dinghy. Note, we have 2 words that mean the opposite. We have basically, which means the essence of, the essential idea is, right, in a roundabout, basically the gist of it is, and then we have
I'm
just.
going to bounce out of this one because I want to go into where we hear his deceit about the cell phone. Is it this one? Let's do this one. I'm going to forward the over.
And that's very strange. So we're going to go back through all of this and try to see if we can't figure out what he tells us and what he doesn't tell us. Now, one important case update. According to Lynette's mother, in an interview with Ashley Banfield, she tells us that Lynette's Apple Watch has been found.
I don't know where. I do know that they found her watch. She wore iPhone watch, iWatch.
An Apple Watch?
Apple Watch.
Was she wearing it the night she disappeared and they have found it?
Yeah.
And they didn't say if they found it inside the dinghy or on board Soulmate, or did they find it on a dock, or they didn't say?
It on the beach somewhere. I can't swear to that.
Now, here is the interesting thing about that. One of the things that we did discover in going through Brian's statement is it appears that he tells us that it was first he says 3/4, but then he changes it to a half a mile trip back to the dinghy.
She basically just bounced off the dinghy in the middle of a little blow, like 20-some knot winds that popped up, and on a half mile maybe trip back to the dinghy. And
everybody kind of assumed that that was a slip up, that he meant to say back to the boat on the dinghy, but that isn't what he said. And as I've said now many times, we are not going to infer. We are just going to take Brian Hooker at his word. Only what he says to us are what we are going to believe. And he did say that. He also said that they made more than one stop that day / night while they were on land.
And then, so this happened like Saturday night, airing all day at the place called Tahiti Beach.
Brian says on April 4th, he and his wife had drinks at this inn, later departing from this dock.
And they're going to have a beach party that pulls up on a barge. And, we hit the next stop and we stayed too long. We left too dark.
And this begs the question, did they get into some kind of a conflict, argument, fight before they even got to the dinghy? Now, I'm very conflicted on this because there is evidence from his statement, because of what I just said, that they never actually make it to the dinghy. And there's also evidence that he explains he saw her swimming back to the boat, which means that they had to have already been at the boat. He also tells us later on in the conversation with Blaine and Marnie something very different about the key situation.
The dinghy key was not attached to me.
I've since found out it's an electric motor, and there is sort of a key-like device with a string that hangs off it, but it's not wrapped around your wrist. It's not a kill switch. So that's hinky to me.
So when we were...
Okay, the dinghy key was not attached to me. And interesting about this is he uncontracts was not. We've seen him use contractions the entire way through this statement, with the exception of one time when we know he was being deceptive. So this immediately calls into question this statement as red flag. Because he wants to stress to his friend here that the dinghy key was not attached to him. He wants to make that very clear to his buddy or friends. Because if that was true, why didn't he just go get her, right? If he had the key, he could just go drive over to where she was.
You were with her because it wasn't clipped to anything or anybody.
Now, this part is bizarre. The dinghy key went with her because it wasn't clipped to anything or anybody. This makes absolutely no sense. Saying that the dinghy key went with her is like saying when you're riding shotgun in my car, you fell out and somehow took my key with you. It feels like he threw this story together without thinking it all the way through. And you see all of the reduction of commitment language. like this, basically that. He loves this word, basically. I think he says it at least 3, maybe 4 times throughout this phone call. These words completely reduce the validity of what he's saying because he's not sure is really what he's saying, right? He's telling you, well, I don't really know. It was like this kind of. And that's because he doesn't really know, because this isn't the story. This isn't what happened. There is nothing. There's no memory to ground to. So it's all just being fabricated. That's the way this is reading. And that's going to make this very difficult to continue to go back to. He says the dinghy key, or actually he says dinghy key went with her because it wasn't clipped to anything or anybody. Okay. So the dinghy key went with her. But then we're going to fast forward.
The dinghy key was not attached to me, you know. So when we were around trying to get back in the boat, the sun was falling. When it fucking kind of dropped off, it was a magnet key, you know.
Okay. So this is completely different from what he said originally. He said that the dinghy key went with her, right? And then at the end of this phone call, he says, when we were fucking around trying to get back in the boat. And the sun was falling when it fucking kind of dropped. It was a magnet key, you know, for the electric motor.
Makes no sense.
This isn't making any sense.
Plus, there's a dry bag with an extra key that was a dry bag.
What is he talking about? Let's think about this again. If he was talking about the key dropping in the shallow water where the dinghy is or was, then in order to get the key, all you'd have to do is pick it up. So if they were fucking around trying to get back into the dinghy, then even if the key drops, you just pick it up because it's shallow, right? That's the whole point. Remember, the dinghy is the vehicle, the vessel you use to get from the boat to land. And if the dinghy was docked somewhere that wasn't shallow, she was there, according to him. So she had the dry bag, and allegedly in the dry bag was the spare key. Or was it?
I mean, you know, that dry bag, Lynette carries a dry bag. She carries all the important shit because I'm not to be trusted with the important shit.
I know exactly. Yeah, we're men.
There's no passports. And the spare dinghy key, I had Jerry Rica magnet now for the dinghy key. And the spare dinghy key, I had Jerry Rica magnet now for the dinghy key.
So you see what happened there, right? He started to talk about the spare dinghy key and about how he had somebody put in a magnet so that he didn't lose it.
Completely.
And then he realized he had already said that it went with her in the dry bag. So he stumbled.
Now there's 2 keys.
And then says what he was going to say anyway. Carefully. This is the problem with deception. It doesn't hold because you can't keep your story straight. And this man who is evidencing all of the telltale.
So if it's a real story, someone is going to be able to say what happened exactly. And there's not going to be 3 different, even slightly different versions that we've heard about this stupid key. Now there's a second key in a dry bag, and then it was dropped in the boat, and then he refers to the dinghy as the dinghy, and what's the boat? It's just there's no continuity to any of this, and this is how I believe, just listening to Sam go through this analysis, none of this actually probably happened. She's probably was never even in the dinghy, and the whole thing is completely fabricated.
Telltale signs of narcissism, with the most pronounced characteristic being the inability to be wrong. Because even as he's telling us the story about what happened to Lynette, it's in a passive voice. The wind came along the entire way through until the very end, where he says something in a roundabout way like, well, I'll never forgive myself for not wearing life jackets. But really, the whole way through, he does not take responsibility. It was just a series of errors, right? Everything that could go wrong did. Then we find out that he has a pattern of not only being fired, but then thinking it was unjust and having his wife pay all these lawyer fees to try to get him his job back unsuccessfully.
He's like a baby.
And then we learn
Like a man baby.
that he wants to live off the grid because everybody else is the problem.
I want to skip forward to the
time. Jesse was 12 or 13 years old, and so he was paying child support on
The first house and then the second house.
And telling us the part about how he wound up where they found him. Made up of a bunch of tiny, have 2 classes available. That doesn't happen with everybody who's ever drank a.
So I'm not finding it, and I don't want to spend a lot of time doing this, but basically what happens is there's a part of Brian Hooker talking about, because everybody's like, why didn't you use your cell phone? Why didn't you call for help? Because he supposedly drifts for 8 hours and ends up on this beach in Marsh Bay. And then he has to walk. It's a rocky bay, and he has to walk through trees and brambles for almost an hour to even get to a phone. Where's the phone? Why didn't he use his phone? Well, he says that the phones went over with Lynette. Okay. Maybe they were in the dry bag. But then there's another version where he talks about, because it was dark, he used his phone as a flashlight. So he can't keep straight whether he had the phone or he didn't have the phone. So if he's using his phone as a flashlight and it's the middle of the night, obviously he could have called for help, but he didn't. And it's very possible. I mean, again, this water is very shallow. At high tide in the deepest parts, it's 15 feet. There's a point where he says he dropped anchor, but he thinks the anchor didn't even stick. But I mean, either it stuck or it didn't stick. Okay, he's like, I think it stuck, I don't think it stuck, or I think it didn't stick. I mean, there's just so much wishy-washy about everything he says. It's really, really bad. And there is actually somebody who's suggesting that he called his friend in this 45-minute long conversation that they recorded that we've been listening to as kind of a rehearsal of the story, because, this is friendly fire. He's going to tell his friends what happened. He's going to go through the whole thing. He's going to let them ask questions and answer their questions as a rehearsal before he goes and talks to police again. You've got to get your story straight. But again, the way our mind works is we are going to tell the story in order of which events happen. We're going to be very clear, concise. Things are not going to change. We're not going to use things and words like basically, she kind of fell out the boat. I kind of got lost. I kind of couldn't see her. I lost my phone. I used my phone. I had this key wasn't attached to her. It wasn't attached to me. I threw the life vest out. They found the life vest. I thought she was going to swim back to the boat. I mean, just, it's all over the place. And I can see how the Bahamian police detained him because his story is garbage. His story is total garbage. But unfortunately, there's only circumstantial. They haven't been able to find her. And as I did in my show last night, I looked at what happens to the body when it goes in the water. It's going to sink, but the water there is crystal clear. And if it's 15 feet down, they found bodies before. They can recover bodies because, especially in this heat, after it's been, let's see, this was April 4th and 5th. It's been 12 days. Her body would have floated back up. Now, we know that there are gobbly-goobies, sharkies, little swimmy things that I don't like in the water, and that could be a problem. but they're going to find material. They're going to find shoes. If she was wearing any sunglasses, the only thing that they've found thus far is her Apple Watch on a beach. That does not make sense. Her Apple Watch is not going to float. It's going to sink. They need to look very carefully. If the Apple Watch was found on a beach, they need to look very carefully in that area with those dogs. Because again, I firmly believe that if this whole thing is a concoction and he is involved with her disappearance, him telling this whole story about them in the dinghy and her just falling out and not being able to get back to the boat, because I mean, it's just ridiculous. Okay, the whole thing is ridiculous. But I believe that he probably is telling the story to redirect people far away from wherever he put her. Now, if he floated for 8 hours, that means he could have, and I don't know if there's GPS, I'm just guessing, but if he floated for 8 hours, he's got plenty of time to do something with her and then go back to wherever he is. And Ashley Banfield did an interview of one of the volunteer first responders from the New Hope Island, I believe I'm saying that correctly. If I'm not, I apologize, fire department that went and helped get the dinghy and recover the dinghy from the bay where it had gone ashore. And she asked him, if you're going to float from this point to that bay in your dinghy, how long is that going to take you? And he thought probably about 4 hours. And that's without, he had an oar in the dinghy. There was an oar. This witness said there was an oar in the dinghy. So if he had an oar and he could paddle, it would only take him a matter of hours. And apparently there's somebody else who swam that distance in some sort of a swimming contest and swam it in 2 hours. Okay. So the 8-hour float with an oar, with or without the phone, is just total poopy too. Okay. It's just unbelievable. And I would say that the smartest thing this idiot has done is leave the Bahamas. Okay. Because there's no chance that he was not going to be re-detained, re-arrested, and they were going to make his life hell. And I'm sure that his attorney told him, you need to go. You need to go. And I'm sure that the mother and the sister are all helping him with the story that she's ill. And supposedly people are calling the hospitals trying to see if his mother is on her, deathbed that they're claiming. They're looking for the hospital. They're looking to see where she is. Now, I've heard that she has kidney issues, but they're chronic, and that she's been sick for a long time. And, I don't know if it's that urgent. I'm sure that they're creating urgency, and it's very convenient that he all of a sudden is son of the year and is going to go sit with mommy beside her bed while she's ill. And I certainly, hope that she's okay. I definitely am not saying that. Hopefully you understand what I'm talking about. So I think it's very convenient, but for this idiot who has bad temper, gets mean when he drinks, and she was a drinker, they were both bad together. Okay. I think that they were both bad together. And I think something just went too far, and a bad decision was made. And hopefully if he gets out of this like Slick Willie, he needs to turn his life around, because he's lucky if he makes out of this, because he's guilty as hell. There's no way in my mind that he's not guilty. And I don't know. I don't think that anyone really believes that he's not guilty. But so anyway, I wanted to share. Thank you for sitting, with me through Sam. I love Samantha and the I Don't Belong Here show. I'm such a nerd. I love learning. I love listening to all the forensic shows like Chris McDonough and Ed Wallace on Duty Ron, because they talk about forensic, and I love listening to all that stuff because I'm a nerd and we learned so much. The true crimers are so smart. You guys are so smart. The super sleuthers, with your logical thinking, your critical thinking, your troubleshooting. I mean, we're a smart bunch of nerds, if you ask me. And I mean that in the best way possible. So, well, that's pretty much all I wanted to go through tonight. I really appreciate everybody joining me. Please make sure that you like and subscribe. The algorithm is a tough beast for me as a new channel. But I'm sticking with it. I love doing live comment. I love interacting with everybody. So I really appreciate everybody coming in for as long as you're able to and spending time with me. I will be at CrimeCon next month. I can't believe it's just about a month away. Very excited to see everybody. So thank you. And until the next time, I hope to catch you on my next live. But until then, I will catch you on the flip side.